Well, folks, we got some brand new information on Nintendo Switch 2, or at least potential information coming directly from Nintendo. Now, I have to warn here that we have a busy day today, right? We have the actual Sony State of Play, which, believe it or not, there's rumored to be a game in the State of Play that's coming to Nintendo Switch. Not even Switch 2, Nintendo Switch. Whether or not it'll be like in the trailer, the logo or whatever, I don't know. But whatever, we're going to be live reacting to that. And we also have the Nintendo Byte podcast tonight. We have a brand new co-host coming in, a big show for you guys. It's going to be really fantastic. I can't wait to get into that show. But here's the thing. We have to first get into something we're actually going to talk about on the podcast tonight. And that is a brand new feature for the Nintendo Switch 2. A feature that, hey, is not possible on Nintendo Switch. But we're going to use Switch as an example because that's what we have on hand to display this. So before we dive in, I want to remind you we're on a road to 150,000 subscribers. If you're enjoying all this content, you want to stay as up to date on Switch 2 as possible, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. All right, let's go ahead over to Video Game Chronicle because this actually comes from a patent from Japan, but obviously it's in Japanese, so we're going to rely on other people that are much better at translating this stuff, although we will look at the original patent as well. We're actually going to talk about how this patent looks like it's real. And it looks like it's real in terms of it being an actual feature for Switch 2 because of the current Nintendo Switch firmware. Let's go ahead and look. So over here, you see this article on Video Game Chronicle. And I know it's a little off-center, so let's move it over a bit. All right. Here we go. A Switch 2 patent suggests its Joy-Con controls can be rotated. Players can be able to play the Switch 2 controllers into the opposite ends. So, as previously revealed in the official Switch 2 reveal video, Nintendo's next console will feature a different mechanism for attaching its new, larger Joy-Con controllers. Instead of sliding the controllers into the side of the console via a rail like the original Switch, Switch 2's controllers attach via a slot on each side and are seemingly kept in place by a powerful magnet. Now, a new patent published by Nintendo suggests players might be able to turn the controllers upside down and plug them in the wrong side of the system. Instead of reporting an error, the patent suggests the Switch 2 could instead flip the display 180 degrees, essentially allowing the user to turn the system upside down. While this may not immediately seem like it would serve much purpose, the new patent notes that because the Switch 2 only has one headphone port, players would therefore be able to decide whether to have it on the top or bottom of their console, depending on their preference. So the user can use the game system by mounting the right controller and the left controller on the opposite side of the main body device, the patent reads. According to this, the users can use the game system in such a manner that the component becomes a favorable arrangement. For example, the user can use the game system so that the upper and lower sides of the main body device are opposite to each other, such that the voice input and output connector on the upper surface of the main body is located below the main body device. That is, the user can insert the earphone into the voice input-output connector from the preferred direction. It would also be noted that while the USB port on the bottom of the Switch 2 is in the center of the system, the one at the top is off to the side. In theory, then, Nintendo or third-party manufacturers could create USB peripherals for the Switch 2, such as a camera that would sit in the middle of the console if the user plays with the system rotated and the middle USB port on top. Nintendo officially revealed Switch 2 last month. Blah, 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 blah. So obviously, I have some concerns with this, and we're going to get into those concerns, but then we're also going to get into the actual patent and what about this thing and why we actually think this patent is real. So the concerns are obviously, if you just look at the Switch, there are some similar design principles, such as the fact that it takes in the air from the bottom and then it blows it out the top. If you flip this over, the hot air will be blowing back at my body in handheld mode. That's a problem. Obviously, the logo is also upside down. That looks weird. Just a cosmetic thing, may not matter. When you go to dock the system, you won't be able to dock it like this. You'd have to go like this and dock it upside down or right side up with the Joy-Cons the wrong way. I don't know if Nintendo cares about that. Also, when you put it down, you want to use the kickstand. Well, the kickstand would be reversed, so then you would have to like take the controller off, flip it over, put the kickstand the right way. It's sort of like a lot of little minor inconveniences like that it seems that it would add in if it gave this ability. All of that, so the headphone jack on the top can then be on the bottom. That's it, right? That's like the only thing they talk about. Yeah, the USB-C would be dead middle, and maybe there could be accessories for that, but it seems like the primary case here, the primary situation, is to allow the headphone jack to either be on the top and bottom. Nintendo could have solved that problem by just putting a headphone jack on the top and on the bottom. They could have also solved that problem by, I don't know, putting the headphone jack here on the actual controller And then that could solve that problem as well. Obviously, Nintendo may or may not be doing this. I think it's a little bit silly just to do something that they could have solved with just different engineering. But we actually have evidence right now in the current operating system that this is supported. We head on over to Central Leaks here, and it says, looks like this is really happening. Switch firmware 19.0 added a function to detect exactly this. And let's open this image. You see, is Joy-Con attached on rail? That was an 11.0. In 19.0.0 is inverted controller connected on rail. So it recognizes that you have connected your controller in an inverted method. Now, it doesn't say what happens when it detects it is connected inverted, but it is saying it can detect an inverted. So I find that to be really interesting. Also, it says on rail. Obviously, it's not using a rail system, but that could just be how they're wording it because the OS is being used on both systems. Now, what's really fascinating is when we look at the actual patent, and it took me a little bit to find this. A lot of places weren't really linking to the actual patent, including Video Game Chronicle. I found to be weird, but whatever. We'll have a link down below. This is the patent right here, and it's important to note because it was published, on the 6th. Remember, their dates are different. This isn't June. This is February 6th, so very recently published as of a week ago. And as you go through all this, you can see there's some English stuff, some French language and all of that, but we're really focusing on the drawings, right? Because the drawings are what give us the examples that we want to see. And you can kind of see that, hey, this looks like a standard orientation here. Here's your cartridge slot, all of that. But we keep going, and you see they detach the controllers. And then, oh, okay, this is normal. There's your middle USB-C. Here's you using it this way. Here's you using it that way. There's the connector. Hold on, we're getting there. There's all the stuff for how the connectors work and everything. We've seen some of this stuff already in prior patents. But we're going to get to a point here where it's upside down. And that is where things get really fascinating. So all of this is stuff we have seen in prior patents. This is just how all the connectors and how everything works, the mouse stuff, right? We've seen all of this. But it's interesting when it gets to the orientation of the controllers on the system. We're getting closer here, right? So we're still in our standard orientation, still reversed. There's your USB-C, still in the same location, but look at the controllers. The controllers are reversed. Headphone jacks over here, yada, yada, yada. So as you can see, this is real. This is a patent from Nintendo for the Nintendo Switch 2. And it's reversed. And it's able to recognize it. Now, again, all of my issues that I have had with this idea, the concept of that hot air blowing at you, the orientation, the little bit more wonky way you got to use dock mode, the fact the cartridge slot's upside down, so you got to insert it on the bottom, which isn't like the first time that's happened. We've had to do that with things like the Game Boy Advance and stuff like that, and other platforms where like there was a cartridge slot on the top and the bottom for backwards compatibility. This isn't a new thing. I kind of feel like if you're holding it upside down, it's silly. But if it adds that convenience for plugging your headphone and not having like the cord go over the top, I guess I get it. This is one of those things that I don't really think this was necessary, but Nintendo might have figured, hey, since we can do it, and there would be some users that might prefer in handheld to put the headphone jack on the bottom, why don't we just allow the orientation anyways? Why block the orientation if we could just let the screen flip and it's not a big deal? So yeah, I guess Nintendo could do it, even though I think it's kind of weird and could have been just, hey, put a headphone jack on the top and the bottom, or just put it on the bottom of the controller. Most people like their headphone cords coming out the bottom of their devices, but a lot of us got used to the top because what we would do is, you'd plug a headphone jack like into the top here, and then we just route the cord behind the system, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. But I guess, convenience, right? Options are not a bad thing. Obviously, we know the Switch supports Bluetooth headphones and headsets now, so like a lot of us use that. Like I use my Apple AirPods to this all the time. Works just fine. I could just continue to do that on the new systems. I don't think I'm going to be using wired headphones very often anyways, but still, it's just kind of one of those little minor conveniences that, while it introduces some other intricacies that are kind of weird, like, again, I wouldn't want the hot air of my system blowing at me. For those that don't care, why not? It's just convenience, right? Anyways, let me know what you think about this. I think it's interesting that if this is in, and the firmware seems to indicate that it is, that Nintendo is just blanket allowing this despite some of the weirdness, just for a minor inconvenience that maybe only a few thousand people use. Nintendo is being very considerate with this platform. That's one thing I'm noticing with Switch 2. They're adding just these little tiny minor conveniences that aren't that big a deal and barely anyone would use, just because they can. I like that. Being considerate. I'm cool with it. Again, I'm probably never going to use this orientation outside of testing the orientation, that it works and all of that. Maybe we'll get to test it at one of these Nintendo in-person events. We'll see. But anyways, let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. I am Nathaniel Rebel-Jantz from Nintendo Prime. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Again, we got our State of Play stream in a little bit. If it already happened, it's cool. Then you'll probably already know the news. And then obviously we got our Nintendo by podcast. I hope you guys all tune in for. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I'll catch you in the next video.